Back to the weekly Brooklyn market update brought to you by Anglo Volker's Brownstone Brooklyn. My name is Katriona Kearney and I'm joined again today by Donald Brennan. Good afternoon, Donald. How are you?
I'm doing well, Katriona, here on Court Street in our Court Street shop. And, lots of activity out here behind me, which is great to see people out and about shopping locally, trying to support the local retailers as we move forward here through this winter. A couple of snowstorms under our belt already, and but the days are getting a little bit longer, which is great.
It's great. So let's look back at last week's data across the 16 key neighborhoods that we track. Obviously, the impending snowstorm last week made it a little bit harder for us to plan and get around, but did it actually affect those people who were thinking about putting their properties on the marketplace? Did they hesitate at all? So give us the new to market statistics, Donald, for last week.
So in the luxury segment, apparently not, because it was volume that was kind of numbers wise of listings on par, which what occurred in the fourth quarter of 20 and also in January. So 11 new to market listings, 5 townhouses, 5 condo resales, and 1 sponsor condo unit, which is those 11 deals. Listings are very similar to the 12 that we saw at the end of the fourth quarter on average per week and 12 in January. Volume, that works out to a volume number 51 million, which is up about 15% of the weekly averages we saw in the fourth quarter and also in January of this year. Below the 2.25 number, a little bit of a different story. We're down in deals, listings coming to market with 42 new to market versus averages of 49 in the fourth quarter of 20 and 54 average per week in January. So a little bit of cooling off there as far as the volume of numbers, deals going out. 6 townhouses were introduced to the market, 5 condo resales, 8 sponsored condo units, and 13 co-ops. And again, if I didn't mention already, that's $46 million worth of volume, which is a little bit off the pace set in January of 59 million per week.
So if we look at median asking prices for those things that actually go into contract, be they a condo, a co-op, or a townhouse, what's that looking like right now in terms of the price points that things are going into contract at?
Great question. In the 2.2 and below segment for townhouses, the median asking price that went into contract was $1.8 million. Condo resales, $1.24 million. Condo sponsor units was $875,000 as the median asking price going into contract. And for co-ops, it was $707,000. In the luxury segment, townhouses we saw going into contract had a median price of $3.71 million. Condo resales, $2.65 million. Sponsor condo units, 3.1, and we didn't see any co-ops in the luxury segment going into contract last week.
So if we look at neighborhoods and those neighborhoods that perhaps were showing the most activity last week?
Yeah, so Park Slope showed a good amount of volume. The housing mix there is a broad range of things. Townhouses seem to take up about 1/3 of the activity there of deals going into contract. Co-ops also another third. About 20% condo resales, and the balance being new condo sponsored product. Williamsburg would have been the next neighborhood seeing most activity, which was all related to condo sales. Condo resales making up 3/4 of that volume, and the balance being sponsored units or new condo development product. It's you do a lot of work in Park Slope, Katriona. It's an interesting kind of mix, not too dissimilar from other neighborhoods, but it's pretty big and broad and has a nice range of housing types to choose from.
It's a big neighborhood and it always has a lot of volume, as we know. And it's one of those places that a lot of people sort of start out in because it has such a good, solid base of beautiful co-op apartments, either in townhouses or in traditional co-op buildings. And as we know, the townhouses there are super attractive to people in terms of their styles and their architecture. And now you've got a lot of new condos as well on top of the condo resales. So it's not surprising that it's active because it's a good hunting ground for buyers in terms of what they're looking for and what they might be able to get. So let's end by talking about new to market listings. because obviously the list prices are usually reflecting what has been happening with the data. So are we seeing any movement in the prices at which things come to market that might be indicative of perhaps a little bit more of a seller's market?
So mixed bag as far as the data goes, and we're going to just talk about data here initially. Then I'm going to share some observations from the marketplace. So looking at the numbers in the luxury segment, surprisingly, townhouses that are coming to market are pricing lower on a medium calculation than the deals going into contract, and that number is 3.5 million versus 3.71 going into contract. Condo resales, opposite story, median price last week was $4 million versus the 2.65 number going into contract. So, you know, it's not just certainly can be expectations. It's always obviously you need to consider what the unit mix is in there as well as those deals going into contract. But anyway, that's a significantly higher number. Sponsor units, almost on par, 2.28 with 3.1 million, so 2.28 new to market median versus the in contract number of 3.1. Below the 2.25 number, again, surprisingly a little bit here, there's a fair number of listings going out there, so median shouldn't be skewed that much, but it's the expectation is kind of lower at 1.65 million versus the 1.8 going into contract for townhouses and below the 2.25 number. Condo resales showing some strength at 1.33 million versus the 1.24 going into contract. Sponsor units a little bit weaker, $679,000 as the median asking price new to market versus the 875 that went into contract, and co-ops a little bit higher, 795 versus the 707. So, you know, a mixed bag looking at the data. As always, you know, we use the numbers to kind of give us some overall guidance, but as we know, everything is not a lot of apples to apples all the time. New development, probably the closest thing you can have an apples to apples thing with certain apartment lines and buildings, but townhouses, not so much. Condo resales, especially in townhouses, again, no two things are really the same, and co-ops fall into that category as well as not having a lot of similarities. So, you know, why I was surprised at some of these two townhouse numbers of the new to market medians is my observation of both being out there on the sell side and also on the buy side, is that there's strong demand, some really strong demand for townhouses. Now, the pricing has to be where it needs to be. A townhouse that needs lots of work, you know, can't be too aggressive in the asking and may not do as well as something that's ready to go, recently refurbished. End users, again, seem always to do better than developer specs on the townhouse side. And that's what I'm seeing for the few deals that are out there. And there's not a lot to choose from, which is always tricky on the buy side. So confidence is pretty strong right now on the buy side for townhouses, especially around the $3 million mark. The pool of buyers is very active and very large.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. Okay, so that's it from us this week. Of course, check back in next week for more accurate and informed observations on the Brooklyn property market. And we will see you next week. Do you want to take us out with a few final words, Donald?
Yeah, and I think next week we're going to try to actually look at one segment of the market in particular, which is the 800 to just under $1 million price point, which over the last 7 months or so has shown the most activity on the demand side. We're going to look at that segment specifically last week and the different housing types in there. So certainly feel, you know, don't miss that one if that's where you are as a buyer or seller. So and just a reiteration of what I just mentioned about, you know, no two things are the same here. If you're a seller of anything, you know, and want real specific information, a strategy, pricing guidance, and something you're thinking about selling, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to do that for you and give you a real kind of honest insight into what you may be able to achieve in the marketplace should you want to list your home. On the buy side, similarly, tremendous insight to what's going on in this marketplace, all the neighborhoods that we track, and even beyond that in Brooklyn. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Great. Thank you, Donald, and see you next week. Bye.
Take care. Have a good one.